First off, my name is CW3 Ricky Jordana. I am an Intel officer by trade, warrant officer by trade. I am in class 25002 of the warrant officer intermediate level education. So today we're just going to kind of talk about you and talk about some of your experience in Vietnam. So I first want to say, on behalf of the United States Army, thank you for many, many years of service that you have given to this country, and welcome home on behalf of the country, and thank you for your service in Vietnam. So let's get to know you. What's your name and where are you from?
My name is Larry Reid. I was born and raised in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm married. I've been married to my wife for 57 years. We grew up in the same city. In fact, we lived right across the street from each other. I have 2 children, 5 grandchildren, and 6 great-grandchildren.
Well, you're a great-grandpa now.
I am a great-grandfather.
Congratulations.
So you want to talk about Vietnam?
So let's start with, were you that drafted or did you volunteer for Vietnam?
Well, it's a funny story. I received a draft notice and then I reported to the Armed Forces Enlistment Examining Station, the forerunner of the MEPS, that's what it was called in those days.
Okay.
And doing my in-processing, they gave me a choice. I could do 2 years as a draftee, or I can volunteer for an extra year. And if I volunteered for an extra year, enlisted for an extra year, it would be 3 years, and I'd get a choice of an MOS and maybe a duty station.
Okay.
So I volunteered for the extra year and picked military intelligence, the Army Security Agency, and off I went to basic training.
Okay. How did you feel when you were drafted or when you got the notice that you were drafted?
Yeah, I had mixed feelings. I was engaged to my wife to be married, and we had to sit down and talk about that because a war was going on. Mm-hmm. My family was not happy.
To say the least, yeah.
I think they were more or less afraid, worried about me going in the Army because, again, there was a war going on at the time.
Mm-hmm. That's a justifiable feeling. So military intelligence, where did you go to basic and AIT?
Yeah, basic training I had at Fort Dix, New Jersey.
Okay.
I had AIT at Fort Devens, Massachusetts. At that time, that was the Army Security Agency base. Mm-hmm. So from there, I went to a place called Two Rock Ranch Station in Petaluma, California, for advanced AIT to learn more Morse code. Morse code was very easy for me because my father was a base operator, and I grew up around the radio, and I already knew how to do Morse code, when I grew up.
Mm-hmm. And was that part of your, when you volunteered to do the extra year, you chose the Morse
Right.
code? Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. What did you think about the training when you were in Petaluma? Did you get pretty relevant? How long was it?
The training was good.
Yeah.
In fact, it prepared me for what my duties were going to be when I arrived in Vietnam.
Okay. Awesome. So tell us what Morse code interceptor operator actually is.
Yeah, I was an 05H, and I was a Morse code intercept operator. My job was to listen to and transcribe enemy NVA or VC Morse code transmissions, and then pass that information and data on to what they call a traffic analysis.
Okay.
And they would interpret it and again relay that information to the commander in the field.
Okay. Was it in English or Vietnamese? Or because it was just
Morse code is dot and dashes, so
yeah.
You transcribe those based upon the dot and dashes, and then
okay.
you took it off your R390. That was the name of the machine that we worked on, and then we handed that to a TA, traffic analysis guy,
Okay.
who interpreted and also passed that information on to the commanders in the field.
I gotcha. Okay. Intel played a huge role. So what was your role in supporting the Tet Offensive and the mission of the American Infantry Division?
Yeah, doing Tet Offensive, everybody was on full alert. You know, we were not in our normal duty positions, which was transcribing code. We were in fighting positions, revetment, hoping that the enemy would not attack the base camp. Okay. So that was very trying at the time.
Mm-hmm. So you weren't part of like a search and destroy. You were at kind of like a garrison base doing
Right.
your garrison
Right.
mission, right? And in case the enemy would come up, you would then take defense of the base. Yeah. So you mentioned that you had phenomenal leaders during that time. Do you remember anybody in particular, or some of the qualities that they had?
No, I don't remember any leaders, but I did have a friend. You made good friendships. Mm-hmm. When you were in Vietnam. I had a friend that came from Matewan, West Virginia. He came from a coal mining town. And of course, I never knew anything about coal mining. And I never knew anything about people living on a coal mining town. So when we were off duty, you know, we would swap stories. I grew up in Philadelphia, so I grew up in the city. Mm-hmm. And I would tell him about growing up in the city. And he grew up in a coal mining town in the country. Yeah. And he would tell me what it was like growing up in a coal mining town where everybody in his family, mom, dad, grandmother, grandfather, aunt, and uncle, worked for the coal mine.
Oh,
okay?
Wow.
And believe me, that was a very interesting story because I never knew anything about coal mining in Matewan.
Do you still keep up with anybody that you served with? Or do you keep up with anybody you served with?
Me and Perry, his name was Perry, we used to keep in contact. He got out of the Army after his tour in Vietnam, mm-hmm. and I stayed in. And, you know, we corresponded with each other for many years, sending Christmas cards, saying hello, and things like that.
Nice. Okay, so why do you think the U.S. was involved in the Vietnam War, in your own opinion?
Why do I think the
U.S. was involved?
The Army participated in Vietnam? Mm-hmm. I think that the United States was involved in Vietnam because they came to the aid of the South Vietnamese or South Vietnam in the fight against the North Vietnam or North Vietnamese.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then while you were there, how much contact did you have with the Vietnamese population? I
had daily contact with the people in Vietnam. We lived in a base camp. Mm-hmm. And the indigenous people, the Vietnamese, they worked in a mess hall, they worked in a barbershop, they worked in the NCO club, okay. They worked in the EM club, mm-hmm. They did our laundry. So I had daily contact there in base camp.
What were your first impressions of Vietnam when you arrived?
It was hot, humid, but the countryside was pretty, you know. Yeah. But other than being hot and humid and during the rainy season, you got wet. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like growing up in the city. Yeah. You know, I wasn't used to being out in the country and seeing people riding on water buffaloes and stuff like that. That was very interesting to see. Yeah. Did you mainly stay on base, or did you get a chance to go off every now and then? When I was you know, I served in Chi Lai and I served in Bien Hoa. And down from Bien Hoa, there was an Air Force base. So sometime we went down to the Air Force base, and as you know, the Air Force lived large. Okay, so when we got to go down to the Air Force base and, you know, do some shopping down there and go to the club down there, that was a treat. Okay, nice, nice. So tell me, what was the day-to-day life of an OH-5 for you while you were there? The day that I arrived in Vietnam? The day-to-day life. So what did you do kind of day in and day out? Again, daily, my job was an 05H. Okay, so we'd wake up in the morning and we would have a meeting, and you would be assigned a target based upon call signs.
Okay.
And then you went to your duty position and you tuned your radio, which was like an R390 in those days, and you listened for the call sign, you know, that your target had, dot and dashes, and each position, each enemy position had a separate call sign. And like one of my targets was the 2nd NVA Regiment. So I knew what the call sign was, so I turned the R390 listening to the dots and dashes until I could find that particular unit. And then once I got that unit, then I would start taking, you know, transcribing the Morse code.
Now, were you typing or were you like handwriting?
Oh, I was typing.
You were typing?
Yeah.
Okay. You had versions of computers or typewriters or?
R390.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just like a typewriter.
Okay, I
Yeah.
gotcha. So what was the base like? It's pretty nice.
Actually, the base in Chulai was okay. The base in Benoit, okay. 2nd Field Force base in Benoit was good. We had a mess hall. We had an EM and NCO club. We had a barbershop. We had a small PX. We had showers, outdoor showers, and of course you had latrines. The latrines was outside, but you know, it was pretty good for being in Vietnam. And we lived in a barracks. Okay.
Yeah. So you said you had a chow hall with Vietnamese people. So how was the food? Did they introduce a lot of Vietnamese food while you were there with the DPAC, or was it?
Not really.
No.
Okay, because you know, one of the things you didn't want to do was eat if I call it the economy,
Yeah.
because you never know what you're eating. So, but the food in the mess hall was really good.
Yeah, was it? Okay.
Yeah, and oftentimes they would fly in, the United States Air Force would fly in steaks, and we would have big steaks at the NCO club and
Keeping them
drink
around.
Pepsi and stuff like that.
Nice, a little taste of home.
Oh yeah.
So how do you think and feel about your experiences when you left and you returned? Like, how was your integration?
Yeah, I was glad to be going. I was glad to be going home. I was glad to be going home in one piece. Okay. I met a lot of friends at the time, and during that time, you know, because there was a war going on and there were draftees, and you met guys from all walks of life, different cities, different experiences.
Right.
But by and large, it was a good experience for me. It taught me a lot about how other people live, you know, and that everything was not like it was in the United States, even though I came from North Philadelphia. So,
Did you leave feeling prideful that you served in Vietnam?
did I what?
That you were prideful that you served in
I
Vietnam?
was very proud of my service in Vietnam. I'm proud today to have served in Vietnam. Okay.
When you visited the Vietnam, how did you feel seeing those names, and did it bring back any memories? And
When I went to the wall, yeah, I took my grandkids to a vacation in Washington, D.C. And there I visited the Vietnam Memorial, and also I visited the wall. And it's a funny thing about that wall, 58,000 names engraved in that wall. But I'll tell you a story. I graduated from Thomas Edison High School in Philadelphia.
Okay.
Thomas Edison High School, and you can Google this, had more graduates, more students killed in the Vietnam War than any school in the United States.
Wow, drafting was heavy in Philadelphia.
The high school that I went to. And some of the names on the wall, you know, because you could follow them around. I located some of the guys that I went to high school with. Their names was on the wall.
Wow. That was heartbreaking.
Yes, very sobering.
Should U.S. forces today be used in operations similar to how we were used in Vietnam?
Yeah, I would leave that decision up to our leaders, okay, to determine if they're going to go to war, this, that, and the other. But personally, I believe in something called the just war tradition. And it's like just war theory. And the just war tradition is based upon 4 principles. The right authority, a just cause, the right intention, and war as a last result. So that's what I think about going to war.
No, that's great. Would you go back to Vietnam?
I'd like to go back someday. I've never been back, but I'm sure that it looks nothing like today like it was when I was there.
I hope not. What did you learn while serving in Vietnam?
Well, I learned a lot. I learned that folks can come together regardless of their racial background. I learned that folks were fighting for the same cause, and there's many reasons why folks were in Vietnam. There was many stories that guys could tell where they grew up at, and you made a lot of friendships. So I learned that the world and the United States is bigger than the small city that I grew up in.
So you continued to serve after Vietnam. You retired as a CW5. What made you decide to continue serving afterwards?
I liked the Army. I enjoyed what I was doing, and that was serving in the armed forces. I like to travel, and as I had my children, I had a son and a daughter, and the Army made it very right for me to stay and provide, with all the benefits and stuff that they have in the Army for families. I've never had a bad assignment. In all the years that I was in the Army, I never had a bad assignment. All the assignments I had was good, except when I was in Korea. That was very challenging. That was a leadership challenge there in Korea.
That kind of leads me into my next question is there anything you change about your service?
Nothing.
Nothing?
No.
Okay, and I just have one final question, Chief. Is there any advice you can give to our current warrant officer cohort?
Yeah, and when I read that question, what came to mind, the advice I would give to a current warrant officer corps, like I would give to anyone going in the military, but particularly to warrant officers, work and study to be the professional, the best professional that you can be. Always remember that as a warrant officer, you are looked upon as a subject matter expert in your specialty. As an officer in the profession of arms, you are held to a higher standard than your civilian counterparts. So I think the warrant officer corps, the non-commissioned officer corps, and the traditional commissioned officer corps, for folks who serve, I believe that you have to understand that you swore an oath, and your oath was to the Constitution, and you need to be the best you can be.
That is fantastic advice. Is there anything you'd like to add before we close this out?
This was a fantastic interview. It jogged my memory, and I really had to go back and pull some ORBs and say, oh my God, when was I assigned to this unit? But it was good.
Good. Well, thank you again so much.
And if anything else I can help you with, just let me know.